things, then you're not
Well,
clean.
You had multiple
there's
facets to the
also a lot
law.
of actually God-given laws that were required too.
Yeah, but I mean, you had multiple facets of the law at the point. Some of them that
But
you're just referencing were ceremonial
no,
laws that had to do
I
with cleanliness and
clarified.
holiness.
I clarified 10 commandments, the 10
But
commandments.
there is also other commandments or other laws that we should be following alongside of that. That's not in the 10 Commandments if
Like
they fit
what?
within the moral law,
Like what?
such as the ones that deals with incest, sexual impurities, and such. You don't see those in the 10 Commandments.
No, you don't.
But are you going to
They
tell me that
are
it's not
in
sinful to
there.
do those?
They are in there in a sense, depending on how you read the 10 Commandments. Just like I said, being an adulteress does not mean that you actually went and had sex with someone. It means that you thought about doing that.
Right, but I mean,
It's all in what's
there's nothing in the 10 Commandments that says that you can't sleep with someone else of the same gender as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible itself, and not commandments.
But
just
that's the
Bible
whole
itself.
point. There's a lot of things in the Bible that is still considered part of the
Okay,
moral
and I
law that is not
understand
part of
that.
the 10 Commandments.
But that's what I'm saying is there were 10 commandments that he gave us.
Yes.
Those that we are supposed to, that's what's written on our hearts and all that kind of stuff, right?
Ten
And then-
Commandments. Who
and
gave
then
it?
there's
Who gave
different
us the Ten
things.
Commandments? Who gave us the 10 Commandments?
Why don't you tell me? We'll see what
God.
you know about it.
What, through Moses?
Who?
Yeah,
Exactly.
God to Moses, yes.
Okay.
Wrote 10 laws on
And how
rocks.
did,
Well,
Okay.
it was
who did Moses give them to?
it was 15
No,
until
no,
one
no.
of the tablets
I'm
was
asking
dropped on
you.
the way down.
Who wrote the 10 Commandments?
God gave them to Moses. He
No.
inscribed. God
Written
inscribed
with
them
the
on
finger
rock.
of God.
Exactly. His
Yeah.
finger came down and wrote them in those tablets.
Yes, but also
Yeah.
God was the one that told Moses what all of the other laws and everything that he said was as well. If they came
Well, yeah.
from
Correct.
God's mouth, you got to consider those, but a lot of those were the ceremonial commandments that were given for cleanliness and other such things.
Well, yeah, woman's on her period. If she sits somewhere, that's considered dirty now, and it has to be for so long clean and things like that. All of that stuff.
But I mean, part of it was that, and then part of it was, because of the whole ceremonial portion of it and holiness as well.
Right.
But there is still an aspect of the moral laws that are in there that are not just the 10 Commandments, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the Gentiles, those outside the will of God, will keep those moral laws for the most part.
Well, at least we try to anyway.
Well, that's not.
God
you can
knows
go to
we're
any
human and we
tribe,
will fail.
anywhere. You start stealing stuff from any primitive people.
Yeah.
You start taking things that don't belong to you. You're gonna get dealt with.
Much like C.S. Lewis wrote when he said, cultures may quibble over about the number of wives that you keep, but on no account can you have another man's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of goes along the same way. In ancient Rome and Greek, it was your status and honor above all things. If you were a woman, you could never, ever tell somebody who is roughly above you in honor or rank and condemn them of rape. That was just not on the books.
No, that's kind of Muslimish too. I mean, the Muslims are very big about that.
Yep.
You can get raped and then they're going to turn around and stone you.
Well, Julius Caesar used to go and sleep with the women at his dinner parties. He'd sleep with their wives
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be
to
Caesar.
show that I'm Caesar.
But I mean,
What are you gonna
I'm
do
just
about it?
saying, yeah, there are other moral laws. Okay.
Yep.
And like I said before, some of those are for different people. Some of them are for the priests. Some of them are for men. Some of them are for women, things like that. But a majority of them actually fall into what was given to us in the 10 Commandments. And talking about that, I mean, Kenzie knows how I am. I'm a clean eater. I don't do pork. I don't do I'm not a seafood eater, so I don't really have to worry about the shrimp and all that. But somebody seems to think that, oh, well, he made all that clean. That's not true. They're tools. He created those things to clean things up. They eat humans. You throw a body at one of them and see how quickly a pig eats that thing. You,
I'm not going to dispute with you there, but I am going to dispute with you there that Peter received from the Holy Spirit the law
no, he
that
didn't.
says
Hold on.
what God has made is made clean. You are not to
Amen.
call unclean.
That's right.
I will disagree with you on that because you are not reading it in context. He was in reference to Peter eating with unclean people. That was what the whole thing was.
Well,
The
it wasn't just that.
context.
Paul, there's even I forget where it is in Acts where Peter is acting like a Jew by avoiding unclean foods
Yeah.
and not eating and basically giving the cold shoulder to Gentile believers. And Paul calls him to the carpet on it. And Peter apologizes. He realizes, yeah, you're right. Okay,
That vision that Peter had with the sheet lowered and take and eat what God has called unclean is, or clean is not unclean. That's my paraphrase. The Holy Spirit immediately, he had sent people from Cornelius to seek out Peter.
right,
And here God is showing Peter, look, there's no more dietary laws, Peter. If I call this clean, it's clean. And
oh,
immediately, what happens? Those guys show up at Peter's door and ask for him, and they take Peter to Cornelius's house. Peter doesn't even want to go inside, and the Holy Spirit falls on that house while he was
right,
there. And Peter's like, okay, I understand that vision now. This is about the Gentiles are not unclean.
right,
They are open to the gospel.
That's what I was saying.
right. You
As
can avoid those
It
opposed
foods
had
if you want
nothing to
to,
do with
but
food.
there's
as
no
opposed to legalistic Jews who would say to the Gentiles, look, you need to be circumcised and you need to keep the law of Moses. Jesus was one thing, but in order to get to him, you got to do this first.
yeah.
And God separated the church from the Jews.
Okay, so you keep repeating what God made clean, or what how did you say it? What was the wording you used? What God made clean?
You cannot call
Peter
unclean.
said this, and
Okay.
I'm looking at Acts chapter 10. Peter said this, and he talked with him. He entered and found many people assembled, and he said to them, you yourselves know how unlawful it is for a man who is a Jew to associate with a foreigner or to visit him. And yet God has shown me that I should not call any man unholy or unclean.
Exactly.
That is why I came without raising any objections when I was sent for. So I asked, for what reason you have sent me? Cornelius said, 4 days ago this hour I was praying in my house during the ninth hour, and behold, a man stood before me in shining garments, and he said, Cornelius, your prayers have been heard, and your alms have been remembered before God. Therefore send to Joppa and invite Simon, who is also called Peter, to come to you. He is staying at the house of Simon the tanner by the sea. So I immediately sent for you, and you have been kind enough to come. Now then, we all are here to present before God to hear all that you have been commanded by the Lord. And they get the
Yes.
gospel, and the Holy
Amen.
Spirit falls on.
Yep.
Okay, so you're using what he just said. You're using what he said as saying that everything's clean now, where that's not true. That wasn't what that verse was about. And if you can show me something in the Bible that shows me that it's okay to eat pork and it's okay to eat these things were put in the water to clean the water, filters to get the toxins out of them, pigs to clean the environment, raven birds and stuff like that to pick up the dead animals that they see and eat. That is what they're
Listen,
for.
I'll tell you this: if a pig, I love pork, and if a pig is unclean to you, great. Just don't tell me it's unclean to me.
Right.
I'll let God tell you eventually.
Now you're in Romans 14. You're starting to set down legalistic requirements for my faith.
No, I'm not saying that you can't.
No, that's the way I took it.
Well,
that's the way I took
Well,
it.
if it's a law, then and we aren't following
no,
it, then
I didn't
what's the
say it was a
consequence?
law. I said that God never intended those to be food.
Well, you know why I thought
Actually-
that though? when I was reading the Bible and I was reading the Old Testament, they had all those laws about two hooves and one hoof and stuff like that. And he went through all animals and creatures alike. Well, I believe when we got refrigerators, we got that God allowed us to have, right? We grew. I believe that we can eat just about anything because we know that if we cook it long enough, it takes out the peasants or whatever that's in it. So that's been my belief.
There is a point to that.
There
is a point to that.
Well, let me read to you Acts chapter 10.
I love pork.
This is Acts chapter 10, verse 9, starting at verse 9. And the next day, as they were on their way and approaching the city, Peter went up on the rooftop about the sixth hour to pray, but because he became hungry and he was desiring to eat, while they were making preparations, he fell into a trance. He saw the sky opened and an object like a great sheet coming down, lowered by four corners to the ground.
Right.
And in it, all kinds of four-footed animals and crawling creatures of the earth and birds of the air. A voice came to him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything unclean or unholy." Again, a voice came to him a second time. "What God has cleansed, no longer consider unholy." This happened 3 times, and immediately the object was taken up into the sky. Now, while Peter was greatly perplexed in his mind as to what this vision was, which he had seen, behold, the men who had been sent by Cornelius, having asked for directions for Simon's house, appeared at the gate. There is a purpose in that vision, because Peter now finds himself in the house of a Gentile and watches the Holy Spirit fall on him.
You have a bigger problem because Paul basically dismisses the Sabbath for Gentiles. When he tells that one man may esteem one day as special, another man may esteem all days as alike.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right there is a scratch on one of the 10 Commandments itself.
You won't have me arguing. Hey, the creation story. He sanctified the seventh day as Sabbath. That doesn't mean Sunday. It doesn't mean whatever day a person chooses to do it. It means
Paul said, you know what? It doesn't matter what day you choose to do it.
As long as you have one day of rest
who's God?
He said, doesn't matter whether it's one day or no days.
Who's God?
The Almighty Creator.
What did the Almighty Creator say?
It's day of rest, not Sabbath. In Genesis, I thought it said it was a day of rest. They didn't call it the Sabbath day.
Actually,
it's a Sabbath in the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Christ also said on the Sabbath that I work because my Father also works.
Mm-hmm. Who said that?
Jesus.
Jesus was accused of working on the Sabbath.
No, he said, and he agreed with them.
He admitted it.
He stated it.
Yeah.
What kind of work? Wait a minute.
Asked them
what
a question,
kind of
which
work?
is it lawful?
No, wait a minute.
He was doing miracles.
Yep.
But what kind of work was he doing? Miracles just came out of him. That's not works. Work.
Wait a minute.
You know what what God was referring to work? Is your job that you get up every day and you go to make money. Going out and buying stuff at the store.
Jamie.
No.
Is it your point or your position that when Jesus said that him and his Father was working, that he wasn't really working?
I don't think he was.
Oh, that's a little too little for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. Another question.
Okay, what is your question?
So do pastors work on the Sabbath then? Because they work on Sundays.
If they're Seventh-day Adventist, yes.
Okay, I'm talking about Christian ones. Okay, well, damn, they are Christian. You get my point.
Dina, okay. So first, I'm looking to see what I can find on the him being accused of breaking it. His response that he was working just as his father was working. Okay, so for that reason, they tried to